On a December night in 2022, Lionel Messi lifted the World Cup. The stadium around him was packed, lit gold, screaming. That image is the one most people still carry of Qatar's tournament. Trophy, bisht, noise. What almost nobody asks is what happened to the building itself. 3 years later, social media is full of clips from inside these same stadiums. Empty seats, dust on the corridors, World Cup branding still bolted to the walls, untouched since 2022. The comments under those videos all say the same thing: billions of dollars wasted. That story is easy to believe. It might also be wrong. Qatar built 7 stadiums for that World Cup, some from nothing, some from major upgrades, and before a single ball was kicked, Qatar made a promise that almost nobody remembers now. These stadiums weren't supposed to stay the way they were supposed to change. So the real question isn't why these stadiums look abandoned. The real question is whether they were ever meant to look the way they did in 2022 at all. Start with Khalifa International Stadium. It hosted Japan's stunning win over Spain, one of the great shocks of the tournament. Today, walk inside and almost nothing has changed. It's still the same shape, the same size it was during the World Cup. That's because Khalifa was never part of the downsizing plan. It became the permanent home of the Qatar national team, and it simply kept doing what stadiums are supposed to do: host football. Khalifa is the control group. It's the one stadium that proves the others were never supposed to stay frozen in their World Cup form. Now look at Ahmad Bin Ali Stadium and Janoub. Both lost roughly half their seats after the tournament ended. Not because nobody wanted them, because nobody needed 40,000 seats for a stadium that, most weekends, hosts a domestic league match in front of a fraction of that crowd. Education City Stadium tells the same story. It opened with room for 44,667 people. Today it holds roughly half of that. The stadium sits inside a university campus, and shrinking it wasn't decay. It was the plan working exactly as designed, adjusting a World Cup-sized venue down to something a local crowd could actually fill. This is where the story most people tell about Qatar starts to crack. The footage of emptiness isn't proof these places were abandoned. In several cases, it's proof Qatar followed through on something it promised years before the tournament even began, that these venues would not stay oversized forever. But downsizing doesn't explain everything, because removing 40,000 seats raises an obvious question: where did they go? The answer is one of the most overlooked details of the entire World Cup. Those seats didn't end up in a landfill. They were shipped out, roughly 40,000 of them, and donated to football infrastructure projects across sub-Saharan Africa. Pieces of Qatar's World Cup are now bolted into stands on a different continent, holding up a different set of fans in front of a completely different level of football. That single fact changes how this story should feel. This was never just a stadium getting smaller. It was a stadium getting redistributed. Now hold on to that, because the next case proves this strategy can work, fully, the way it was promised. Bayt Stadium. In 2023, it hosted matches at the Asian Cup, proving it wasn't a one-tournament venue. The Qatar Stars League plays there regularly, and the area around it has grown into something closer to a small district, with parks, retail space, and hospitality built into the same footprint that once held a World Cup crowd. Bayt is the answer to anyone who says Qatar's legacy plan was empty marketing. It wasn't. At least once, it worked exactly the way it was pitched, years before construction even finished. By this point, the picture should feel almost settled. Some stadiums stayed the same because they were always meant to. Some shrank on purpose. Some seats left the country to build football somewhere else. One stadium became a genuine community success story. That would be a satisfying place to end this. It's also incomplete, because there is one stadium in this story that nobody can fully explain, and it might be the most important one. Stadium 974. It's named after the exact number of shipping containers used to build it, 974. It wasn't constructed like a normal stadium and quietly modified afterward. It was designed, from the very first sketch, to be taken apart completely. No other World Cup stadium in history was built with disassembly as the actual goal. For a while, the plan seemed clear. Reports suggested Stadium 974 would be shipped out and rebuilt somewhere in Africa, becoming the boldest version of Qatar's legacy promise: an entire stadium relocated, instead of just its seats. Then the story shifted. Later reports linked the stadium to Uruguay instead. 3 years on, there is still no confirmed answer. Stadium 974 isn't standing the way Khalifa is. It isn't shrinking the way Ahmad Bin Ali did. It isn't thriving the way Al Bayt is. It's somewhere in between, a stadium that technically still exists, built specifically not to exist in that form for long, waiting for an ending nobody has written yet. And that, more than any single fact about seats or capacity, is the real story hiding inside this question. Qatar's World Cup didn't just leave behind 7 stadiums. It left behind an experiment, one that's still running in real time. Some parts of that experiment have clearly succeeded. Some parts have clearly fallen short of expectations. And one part is simply unfinished, frozen between two lives, with the world having mostly stopped watching. Every World Cup host before Qatar built stadiums and mostly hoped for the best afterward. Qatar is the first to treat what happens after the final whistle as part of the design itself, shrinking some venues, exporting pieces of others, and building one stadium that was never meant to stay in place at all. Future hosts are already learning from this. The 2026 World Cup leans almost entirely on stadiums that already existed, built for other purposes long before this tournament was ever awarded. That choice didn't happen by accident. It happened because Qatar showed, in real time, exactly how complicated it is to build something that big for something that short. So the next time a clip shows up online of an empty, dusty stadium in Qatar, framed as proof of waste, remember what's actually happening in plenty of those frames. That isn't always neglect. Sometimes it's a promise being kept, seat by seat, container by container. And somewhere, inside a stadium built from 974 shipping containers, the most honest ending to this story is still being written.